Sometimes, the most powerful stories of kindness don't come from grand gestures or famous heroes. They happen in the small, everyday moments of life when an ordinary person chooses compassion over convenience. This is the story of a teenage cashier, an elderly woman struggling with her groceries, and a moment of pure humanity that touched the hearts of an entire grocery store. A moment that reminds us that kindness is contagious and that one act of love can ripple further than we'll ever know. Before we dive in, welcome to Kindness Corner. If you believe in the power of love, compassion, and everyday heroes, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit subscribe, like this video if it warms your heart, and share your own kindness stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon in a small town in Ohio. The kind of place where neighbors greet each other by name and most people shop at the same grocery store week after week. Inside, the store buzzed with the usual rhythm, shopping carts squeaking, announcements over the intercom, kids tugging on their parents' sleeves for candy. At register number 5, a teenage cashier named Jacob was finishing up his shift. 17 years old, tall, a little shy, but always polite, Jacob was known by co-workers for being reliable and kind-hearted. Just as Jacob was about to clock out, an elderly woman entered his lane. Her name was Mrs. Thompson. She was in her late 70s, with silver hair tucked neatly under a worn wool hat. Her coat looked several winters old, and her shoes were a little scuffed. Still, she carried herself with quiet dignity. Her cart wasn't overflowing, but it held the essentials: bread, milk, a carton of eggs, a small package of chicken, some apples, and a few canned goods. It was clear she wasn't buying luxury items, just the basics to get by. Jacob greeted her warmly. Good afternoon, ma'am. How are you today? She smiled softly, her eyes tired but kind. Oh, I'm all right, dear. Just taking it one day at a time. As Jacob scanned the items, Mrs. Thompson reached into her purse. She pulled out a small coin pouch and carefully counted a few crumpled bills. Her hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the counter. When Jacob announced the total $42.19, her face fell. She looked at the money she had and realized it wasn't enough. There was a pause. The kind of pause that feels heavier than silence. Mrs. Thompson's cheeks flushed. She whispered, almost to herself, I thought I had enough. Then, after a moment, she added softly, I'm so sorry. Jacob could see the embarrassment in her eyes. She started picking up a few items, putting back the apples, sliding the chicken to the side, and reaching for the carton of eggs. Each movement seemed to weigh on her, like she was not just putting back food, but putting back comfort, nutrition, even her independence. Up behind her, a small line had formed. Some shoppers looked impatient, checking their phones, sighing quietly. But others were watching closely. Jacob felt something stir inside him. He thought of his own grandmother, who lived alone after his grandfather passed away. He remembered how she always insisted on being independent, even when times were tough. Without thinking too hard, Jacob did something that would change the mood of the entire store. He reached into his back pocket, pulled out his wallet, and quietly slid his debit card across the counter. Don't worry, ma'am, he said softly. I've got this. Mrs. Thompson froze. Her eyes widened in shock. Oh no, I couldn't possibly let you do that, she whispered, her voice shaking, but Jacob gave her a gentle smile. Please, he said. Let me help. Everyone deserves to have groceries. For a moment, she looked at him as though searching for words. Her lips trembled, and her eyes began to well with tears. Finally, she whispered, You're an angel, young man. Truly. Jacob quickly paid for the groceries and handed her the receipt. He bagged her items carefully, placing the eggs on top so they wouldn't break. The line behind them had grown quiet, eerily quiet. The usual chatter and background noise of the store had stilled, as if everyone was holding their breath, and then, something unexpected happened. A man in line stepped forward. He was middle-aged, dressed in a work uniform. He tapped Jacob on the shoulder and said, Son, that was the kindest thing I've seen in a long time. I'd like to pay you back for that. He tried to hand Jacob a $20 bill. Jacob shook his head. No, sir. Thank you, but it's okay. I didn't do it to be paid back. That's when another woman, holding a toddler on her hip, spoke up. Well, I think we should all do something. She pulled a few dollars from her purse and placed them on the counter, and then another person did the same. And another. Within minutes, a small pile of cash had gathered by the register, more than enough to cover the groceries twice over. Mrs. Thompson stood in awe, tears streaming down her face. She clutched her chest and whispered, "I don't know how to thank you all. This means more than you'll ever know." Jacob, now fighting back tears himself, simply said, "You don't need to thank us, ma'am. Just know you're cared for. That's what matters." By now, the store manager had noticed the commotion and walked over. When he learned what happened, instead of scolding Jacob for stepping out of protocol, he praised him. "This," the manager said, "is the kind of world we should all be building. Jacob, I'm proud of you." The line of shoppers, once strangers, now felt like a small community bound by compassion. Some people hugged Mrs. Thompson. Others offered to help carry her bags to her car. The atmosphere, once ordinary and routine, was now filled with warmth, gratitude, and even laughter through tears. When Mrs. Thompson finally left the store, she turned back one last time. Her voice carried through the quiet crowd, "Today, you reminded me that there is still goodness in this world. I'll never forget it." Jacob finished bagging the last of her groceries, his own heart full. He didn't think of himself as a hero. He just thought of his grandmother, of kindness, of doing what felt right, but what he didn't realize was that his simple gesture had created a ripple. Everyone in that line would go home that night and tell their families what they saw. Some would tuck their kids into bed and say, "You know, there are still good people out there." Others would carry the memory into their own lives, maybe paying it forward in ways Jacob would never see. That's the thing about kindness, it doesn't end where it begins. It spreads, multiplies, and grows into something bigger than we can ever measure. In a world where we often hear about division, conflict, and hardship, stories like this remind us of something deeply important: compassion is still alive. Sometimes it shows up in the most ordinary places, in a grocery store, at a checkout counter, between strangers who choose love over indifference. Jacob's decision to step in for Mrs. Thompson was more than just covering the cost of groceries. It was a reminder that kindness isn't about money, it's about dignity, respect, and humanity. And the way the entire store responded proves something powerful. When one person leads with kindness, others will follow. So the next time you see someone struggling, remember Jacob. Remember Mrs. Thompson. And remember that even the smallest act of kindness can bring hope, healing, and tears of joy, not just to one person, but to everyone who witnesses it. After all, kindness is contagious. And when we choose it, we make the world a little softer, a little brighter, and a whole lot better.